The origins of Melanesians, their genetic makeup and where they came from. According to mainstream science and the overwhelming majority of evidence and research, as far as we know, Oceanians and South Eurasians, like the Melanesians and Andamanese, are not related to Africans, more than other non-Africans are, either in their haplogroups or in overall autosomal ancestry. Melanesians and Oceanians descend from the same, about 50 to 60,000 years ago out of Africa migration group that other Eurasians and non-Africans do. And they belong to a southern Eurasian branch of non-African modern humans, whose ancestors migrated and settled along the south of Eurasia and Oceania/Australasia after leaving Africa. Thus it would make no sense for them to be more closely related to Africans, since just like other Eurasians, they left Africa many tens of thousands of years ago, and genetic studies show that they aren't, though they have retained some original African genetic traits affecting appearance. There was more than one migration of Homo sapiens out of Africa, but modern non-African groups derive overwhelmingly from the 50 to 60,000 Kia migration, with the earlier ones having mostly gone extinct. About 2% of the ancestry of Melanesians, Papuans, and Australian Aboriginals, but not Andaman Islanders or East Indians, however, survives from an earlier circa 125,000 years ago Homo sapiens migration from Africa, with the rest deriving from the predominant ca 50-60 Kia migration wave. There is some disagreement regarding exactly where Oceanians fit in the Eurasian/non-African tree, but all agree that they descend from the same initial out-of-Africa migration population as other non-Africans. Some research, such as that of Matsumura 2018, posits that southern Eurasians and Oceanians are a divergent branch of Eurasians and non-Africans, that split and went its own way soon after the EU migration, and was thus less related to other Eurasians than other Eurasians are to each other. Here is a phylogenetic tree, population family tree, of modern human populations, from Tishkoff et al. Below you can see that Africa has the most diversity among modern humans/Homo sapiens, with many divergent branches, and non-Africans descend from one branch that split from one of the branch of Africans and then left Africa, subsequently branching further. The graph dates the EU migration at 100,000 years ago, but most more recent studies, for example Posthumus et al. 2015, Aki et al. 2016, Haber et al. 2019, Vi et al. 2019, and others, dated to around 50 to 65,000 or 50 to 60,000 years ago. A recent paper has supported the second model, finding that after the EU migration, a branch of early non-Africans split into two main branches somewhere around South or Southeast Asia. One migrated northward, likely to the area of China, Siberia, or the Himalayas, to become the ancestors of East Asians, and some of the ancestors of East Siberians, and Native Americans, etc., and the other remained in South Eurasia and became ancestral to Southern Eurasian and Oceanian groups like the Aussie, an indigenous South Asian group that contributed to the genetics of East Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, Bengalis, South Asians etc., Andaman Islanders, Andamanese, and Oceanians, Melanesians, Papuans, Australian Aboriginals, Southeast Asian Negritos, etc. But interestingly, according to the new research, some East Asians, who are mainly or substantially descended from the northern group, also have admixture from the southern group, including Tibetans, Japanese, Ainu, the ancient Jomon of Japan, Southeast Asians, and others. The 2019 papers by Shinda et al. And Narasimhan et al. Also supported the idea that the Aussie, Andamanese, and Australian Aboriginals and Oceanians shared a deep common ancestry with East Asian. It is not unique that the Andamanese or Oceanians, though some may sometimes have basal branches of it. Is also the origin of most or many of the mtDNA clades of both Asia and Oceania, and would likely also once have been present further west. Other Eurasian maternal lineages descend from M sister haplogroup. Both M and N derive from haplogroup L3, which left Africa as part of the EU migration of about 50 to 65,000 years ago. Some geneticists believe M and N diverged from L3 in the Middle East right after the UA, while others believe the divergence had already happened in North or East Africa just before. The majority opinion now seems to be the former, though Vi et al. 2019 suggested a North African origin for N as an alternative/secondary possibility. As mentioned, and as the mtDNA migration map, linked below, you can also find others online that are similar, shows, various descendants/branches of M are common all over both Asia and Oceania. Oceanians also do not carry paternal Y DNA haplogroups associated with Africa. In both the maternal and paternal lineages, as well as autosomal DNA, Oceanians and South Eurasians are a branch of Eurasians, are nested within the branch of Eurasian and non-African diversity. All modern human paternal Y haplogroups, both in and out of Africa, derive from A, which originated in Africa and is the oldest/most basal haplogroup. B split from A early and remained in Africa. B is especially common among African pygmies and is not found outside Africa, certainly not in the Andamanese or other Oceanians. CT later split in Africa from a common ancestor shared with B, called BT, and CT is of African origin and is the common ancestor both of all non-African Y lineages, through FT, C, or CF, and the DM174 branch of D, which became established in Eurasia after/as part of the UA, and also of the mostly African lineage DA, which likely originated in Africa and is still mostly based there, but had some offshoots migrate to Eurasia later. The Andamanese carry a branch of D, DM174, but DM174 is also found elsewhere in Asia, such as among the Ainu, Japanese, Tibetans, some Siberian groups, and rarely in the Philippines, and it likely descends from a migration of basal D, known as DCTS 3946 or as D/D0 in Haber et al. 2019, from Africa around the time of or just after the UA, which mutated into D174 when in Asia. But, as far as we know, non-Andamanese, Oceanian and South Eurasian groups do not carry D. Instead, most Papuans, Melanesians, and Australian Aboriginals for instance carry the Y haplogroups C, M, S, and possibly sometimes K, none of which are especially close to African haplogroups. Some early anthropologists used to classify Oceanian peoples as Negroid based on similarities in appearance and assume that they were related to Africans on that basis, but genetic evidence, along with other evidence, linguistic, archaeological, anthropological, has shown that they are quite distinct. The classification of Oceanians as Negroid or especially related to Africans is very much outdated. Yuan's claim that the Andamanese are related to African pygmies is particularly absurd. African pygmies are a very deeply rooted and divergent group branch of Homo sapiens, having split in Africa somewhere between 300 to 150,000 Kia, and are not especially close to the Africans that gave rise to the UA ancestors of modern non-Africans. East Africans would be much closer, while the Andamanese are simply one descendant branch of the UA group.